one, technology will improve. I mean, again, remember, I'm a geek at heart. I believe it will improve. You get a better and better and better experience. And two, the thing about technology, it scales. Today, your friends, your family.
No, I understand all of that, Sanjay. My point is just that it will still be like everything else with technology, virtual. It won't be a real experience, and that's what the difference.
Yeah, it's a difference. It's movie versus life. I mean, you want to live and you want to watch a few movies, and there's.
I think the point that you are making is that the preservation of works is a very important point, and of course, one way to preserve is definitely using technology to give.
I'm not in disagreement of that.
Preservation and security.
Security.
But the other thing I want to say that.
But the enjoyment, the whole rasa, that needs to be that tactileness needs to be up close.
When you are a collector and you own these works, you also have a responsibility, and that's what I think you were referring to. For example, in my apartment where the 70 Jamni Roy works hang, so there's a few rules. First is the blinds can never be up, sun can never be up inside. Number two, nobody's allowed to have a light on except in the room they're in. Thirdly, unless they're reading, the light cannot be high, has to be at a very low level. Fourthly, the air conditioning has to be on. But you come and see the 70 Jamni Roys in my apartment, and you compare them to the Jamni Roys you see in India, you will see a distinct difference because it's watercolor, it deteriorates with age, humidity, with heat, and with light. And you have abundance of all of those in India. So there's a luminosity, there's a luminous quality to my Jamni Roys, which you will not see in the Jamni Roys in India, no matter whose house you go to or any museum you go to. And that's what preservation is about, because people who are seeing the Jamni Roy, the Indian Museum in Calcutta, are not getting the Jamni Roy experience.
No, I don't think this is also preserving, it's also the fact that you're so passionate and committed to it. You don't have museum directors like that. You have one person, but otherwise you just got a bunch of bureaucrats who are being transferred. So there are sort of systematic things that have to happen before we can start thinking of bringing our heritage back, as Sandeep said. Until then, it's just going to be private collectors who can afford to and who have the passion and who believe that I have the money and I will bring back X amount of Chola bronzes or, whatever. It's not as easy as just discussing it. It has to happen at the government level. It has to be public-private. It's a series of several initiatives that have to take place before we can even think about it. And until then, it would be a pity if serious private collectors with deep pockets did bring some of it back and find ways in which they could do this, where they can work with a museum or with a gallery and show their collection. Perhaps if Nirmalya decides at some point to show his collection in India, it would be fantastic. Like some of his Tagores, as you said earlier, are here and we have access to seeing them.
Coming back to the preservation point, I mean, I do believe that buying art is 50% of the job done, and as all of you mentioned, preserving it and conserving it and ensuring it is the other 50%, because that's the most important. So to give the artwork the respect that it deserves. I mean, I don't know if any of you even catalog your works, because with extensive collections.
We're just happy collectors. Don't believe in insurance. I'd rather spend that money on buying something else. If I lose it, okay, say lucky. No, I think storage is an issue, but I think insurance, not for me.
And being online,
I do believe documentation is important because, as Nirmalya said, you're just custodians of these works, and you want to take care of history. If you're going to be a role model for people to actually value our culture, you have to, in the end, document it. I mean, and there's time to do it. I mean, you're probably not there yet, which is fine. But I think if you think about it as a legacy, then documentation is important. And also for the future, I mean, if you want to deal with the issue of fakes, documentation becomes even more important. So I'm currently going through the pain of documentation. It's terrible, but you have to do it at some point.
And the insurance company requires at least, in London, it requires that every painting has to be individually listed and because they're above a certain level of, so I mean, in any case, if you're going to insure them, you have to give the documentation to the insurance company.
And again, let me get on my technology kind of high horse here.
Because there are online
I mean, today people are collecting videos, and the screens are so poor, and they still, give a lot of pleasure. In a few years, you're going to have screens that are good enough to show your Jamni Roys in their true glory. and you don't have to, you can leave your lights on. You can put your John Leroy's away, put the screen up, turn the lights on, read, enjoy life. But the screens are going to be so good. I mean, I've seen a couple of the LCD screens, in Japan, and they're just so awesome that I'm, at least for the size of John Leroy paintings, they're probably going to be as good as the original.
But they won't be real.
They won't be real. And what is real, right?
Real is real.
So, Ranvir, I mean, all of you've been involved in buying art for many years, but I don't know if you've thought of showcasing your collection and making your art more, exclusive as opposed to, being inclusive. And have you ever thought of starting a foundation or a museum or any other outreach activities? You're heavily involved in the cultural scene here in
I don't think
Chennai.
the quality of my collection.
Not with your collection, but in terms of organizing other cultural activities.
Yeah, I do that. That's a passion. So
Foundation.
I do that. Yeah. But that's different from collecting art. That's just something I'm deeply passionate about. So we do festivals and performances and book launches and lectures and interlogical stuff. So there's a whole lot of
and
that.
how challenging is that for you?
It's hugely challenging. It takes up more than half my life. And I'm not able to pay attention to my business. It's like a second wife. It causes terrible jealousies at the home front. I mean, it's a tough call when you're deeply committed and passionate about something. So it is challenging, because culturally when you're trying to do something privately and there's not a lot of corporate support, there's not a lot of corporate people who will put money or into culture.
Maybe you can highlight what exactly does Prakriti Foundation
I think most people in the room from Madras know we do festivals, we do book launches, we do interlogical lectures, we just started publishing. It's a cultural arts foundation. I think at least perhaps 50% of the people in the room must have come to a Prakriti event over the last 12 years. I think we've done more than 300 events, and we do around the year 7 calendar festivals. So it's a lot of stuff. It's very exciting for me. But what I find is that while there is a market or where there is an audience, it's very difficult to get corporate support, because, as I was saying to somebody earlier this morning, people believe when they have deep pockets, besides indulging in collections of private art, the key things that Indian corporates believe in are hospitals, schools, and of course, very obviously, a family that believes in doing planetariums. So where do you move beyond that? Because there's only very, very limited support from the government, and I'm hoping it'll all change with as Sandeep said, that hopefully there'll be corporates who bring in heritage back. There'll be enough people who are interested in culture as well.
I think you should lobby the DMK to give out free paintings.
Free photographs. They started with free laptops today, so it's a start.
So any plan? I mean, you loan your works to the British Museum, right?
I loan my works to whoever wants to display.
Okay.
Because in the end, it's about getting the most people to experience John Leroy, because for me, I'm a fan, and whatever I can do to share his genius.
I think that's great. I think that's very, very, very
to be so
good.
dedicated and
Very
focused
good.
and disciplined.
Yeah, to be able to share that and to have that.
Yeah.
But the problem is, to your question about looking for a museum. So I thought about a museum for John Leroy, the way you see the Miro Museum in Barcelona, the way you see the Picasso Museum or the Van Gogh Museum or the Rembrandt Museum. So I went to, so I was told, okay, Nirmalya, you want to do a museum in India? Talk to HK. So of course in India, the good thing is you need one phone call and you can find the direct contact. I found one phone call. I found out that he lives in the same building as my good friend Deepak Bhartiya. I showed up. HK told me, Nirmalya, let me take you to my museum. I went to his museum in Bangalore. It's really a wonderful museum. It really is a wonderful museum. Saturday morning, 11 o'clock, I'm there. I'm walking around that museum. There were less people in the museum than the number of staff he had. And this is on a Saturday morning at 11:30. There's no we can blame the government for anything, but there's no culture of going to museums over here. So if people don't go to museums, why would the government spend any energy and effort in looking after the museum? Why will there be a demand for the museums to improve? Right? So I think in a democracy, you can't blame the government for anything. You have to blame yourself, because we are the ones who have built it.
But why is it that when Indians travel, they go to museums in other cities?
Yeah.
I mean,
don't you think there's a level of responsibility in terms of engaging?
You and I both, when we went abroad, we had to follow the rules when we were there, but when we were here, we just don't follow the rules. I mean, who knows why Indians behave
a cultural specific thing.
It's almost like they, change their brains when they leave
Because you're right, you go to British Museum, you'll always see a huge contingent of
Exactly.
Indians. For sure.